Yes, Soulslike has become shorthand for challenge. Any action adventure where death is punished, where combat demands precision, or its world is mysterious and complex, then it's caught in From Software's net. On one hand, labeling something as Souls-like brings clarity to expectation. You gain an idea of what to expect, even if arguably not every game labeled as Souls-like is indeed Souls-like. On the other hand, players are getting burnt out. Even as an increasing number of non-From Software developed titles are holding their own in a crowded space. Look, what the genre really needs is innovation, a fresh perspective, something novel, if only to rejuvenate fatigue. Well, incoming from Ghostrunner devs One More Level is Valor Mortis, a self-declared Souls-like fought in first person. Set in a supernatural Napoleonic nightmare, Valor Mortis, while not the first attempt, might be the most serious stab yet at shifting Souls-like surgical precision to first person. With melee combat, especially first-person perspectives, are where countless games have struggled. Spatial awareness, depth perception, field of view. How will One More Level ensure responsiveness and fluidity when the camera naturally frames the action tightly? Well, before we get there, first, you need resurrecting. Valor Mortis begins face down in the mud. You are a walking corpse of William, a downed soldier mysteriously reanimated by the order of Napoleon's screeching whispers. You stalk a soggy battlefield's aftermath, a hellscape of fresh death and fog, unsure of who, if anyone, was victorious. You're not alone. More undead walk too. Occult forces acting as narrative flesh to wrench from charred bones. If Souls-like is also shorthand for bleakness, well, Valor Mortis ticks every single box. And the game's Napoleonic setting could prove a masterstroke, giving One More Level leeway for multi-directional storytelling, world building through alternative history and fantasy. As famous for defeat as he is societal reform, Napoleon Bonaparte's legacy appears here to provide a playground for numerous phantasmagorical what-ifs. Like, what if Bonaparte knew how to raise the dead? Would he still have lost the Battle of Waterloo? So yet, as primed for fantastical retelling as Napoleonic Wars are, we run into Valor Mortis' first concern. Are these murky battlefields built for readability? Watching early gameplay footage, stepping through sodden, miserable, overcast miasma, the predominant tones are gray and brown. Enemy silhouettes aren't as high contrast as you'd think they need to be, given the game's stated desire to replicate Souls-like's demanding combat. Yet, there's no need to jump the gun. Stonework villages, forests, and icy plains also occupy revealed trailers and artwork shared by the developer. Each setting is grim and dimly lit, suggesting perhaps that the studio is looking to push a specific way to play their Souls-like beyond the demands imposed by a narrower field of view. You'll need patience and to be deliberate, choosing your actions carefully. New ways to manage space even. See, where Valor Mortis' setting sells the fantasy, it's in design and art style which ultimately reinforces close quarters clarity. To hit the fluid satisfaction which only a good Souls-like can, their design relies on readable telegraphs, tight timing windows, balanced hitboxes, and, the glue holding it all together, awareness of surroundings. When tightening the action to first person, issues are introduced. Again, depth perception, difficulty reading wide attacks, tunnel vision, and reduced peripheral awareness. These are all undeniably harder to overcome in first person. So what does Valor Mortis do to overstep these potential pitfalls? Well, Souls-like traditional building blocks are all present. Light and heavy attacks, limited healing items, block dodge and parry maneuvers, multiple health bars, stamina, and stagger meters. But there is a big mechanical identity shift among that feature list. You see, blocking still causes chip damage, which will undoubtedly push you towards perfecting your parries, more Sekiro style. However, timing windows appear, at this current pre-alpha stage, to be more forgiving than From Software's Shinobi Epic. Look, you might be concerned by all of this, but there are two things to consider. One, these wider timing windows may narrow as the game goes on, or could be refined altogether in later builds. And two, slightly wider windows when compared to Sekiro at all are a potential necessity for first person. There needs to be a challenge, but the difficulty should always be manageable. Still, it's all in the feel, right? Mastering strict precision brings satisfaction and flow, but Valor Mortis might not be aiming for this. We could have some sort of accessible hybrid on our hands, instead of pure masochistic punishment. Whether that replicates Soulslike's feel or brings something new to the table, well, we're just gonna have to wait and see. Either way, parrying is the centerpiece, offering a rhythmic beat that's accentuated by the studio's Ghostrunner lineage. There's still flow, momentum, and readability, it's just different to what you imagine given the game's Souls-like framing. Plus, given the elemental transmodification abilities, shooting fire from your hands like an 18th century set System Shock, Valor Mortis, after all, seems to be mixing immersive simulation into its identity. Yet, no matter the arsenal, or the powers, flow, or momentum, there's one make-or-break issue which one more level are still working on: field of view. You see, fighting multiple enemies in the first person is notoriously messy. Taking on the game's huge bosses inevitably means their hulking limbs swing from out of shot if you get too close. Valor Mortis' default viewpoint is undeniably tight, but the devs are addressing this. An FOV slider has now been added, appearing in settings after the bulk of playtest footage has already been uploaded to YouTube. While there isn't much viewable evidence out there at the present, increasing FOV might lower fidelity or reduce intimacy, but playability is sure to have received a boost. There is a hidden counterpoint to widening FOV too, and it harkens back to our suggestion you'll need to adapt to managing space in a new way. This is because you're positioned right inside the danger zone. Skirmishes aren't abstracted to third person, meaning the fight stays between player and enemy. Warring with perspective is thrown out in favor of carefully paying attention. If the narrower field of view means that you can't perceive your surroundings, then take a step back. Observe what's going on, and you do this when studying your opponent's attacks in Souls-likes anyways. Narrow FOV doesn't change the process, it more reshapes immersion. If the studio gets a handle on some of the game's other stated problems, difficulty deciphering depth perception, as in sometimes the sword plunges deep while other times it's a swing and a miss, and reading enemy telegraphs without resorting to over-exaggerated animation, well then Valor Mortis will instantly elevate itself beyond earlier first-person Souls-like experiments. Games like the melee-heavy Elderborn, which struggled with readability, Witchfire, which diluted the experience with FPS and roguelike elements, Warhammer 40k Darktide with its excellent yet imprecise hit feedback, or even Kingdom Come Deliverance, which admittedly doesn't follow the Souls-like loop at all despite its dueling depth. If one more level solves the perspective issues, then Valor Mortis could become the most convincing, true first-person Souls-like yet. And really, in discussing Souls-like's DNA, or speculating whether Valor Mortis imbues the same lineage, or if it incorporates too much immersive simness to be a true innovation in the genre, the bottom line is this: the game has insane potential. Whether precision-first combat can be executed faithfully in first person, that remains unknown. But if anyone can pull it off, it's one more level, with their already demonstrated grasp of motion and camera control in Ghostrunner. The game still has a way to go, but if the potential showcased in trailers and gameplay footage so far is anything to go by, whether it fully hits its Souls-like ambitions or not, Valor Mortis is set to inject some much-needed innovation into the first-person game space.
And that'll be about it for this one. If you guys like what we're doing at GamingBolt, please consider subscribing to our channel, and I'll see you guys on the next video.